You know, while we call up Ray Bluth up here, let me talk about some of his accomplishments. He won the 1959 Masters Championship. He's won 2 PBA titles. He bowled 2 800 series and 2 300 games on national TV. Just think of the pressure there. He was a 3-time PBA champion and a USBC Masters titleist. He's a member of the PBA, ABC, Missouri State, and St. Louis Halls of Fame. And the list goes on and on. Ray, come on up. I think it's on.
Is it on?
You're on.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Originally, I thought it said entombment, but it says enshrinement.
Well, Ray, how does it feel being back here at St. Louis U High, and what are some of the memories that you might have?
Well, nobody's hit me in the head since I came back. In the classroom, Father Benoit, you know, a lot of wonderful memories of the people that I went to school with. Gene Gartland, the great quarterback. We had Ed McCauley, was about a year ahead of me. So I can relate to the members here at the school.
You were telling me earlier that you had some other interests in other sports. What happened there?
Well, basically, I always like to talk about my daughter was in St. Genevieve in the basketball, and they needed a coach, and I would take her every week to the basketball game. They needed a coach, so they said, "Ray, will you coach?" And I said, "Well, I know nothing about basketball, but I will." So my team lost 8 straight games, and they replaced me. So the night of the banquet, Ed McCauley, and that's his son sitting, where's Bob? That's his son over there. But anyway, at the night of the banquet, they're making presentations, and Ed looks down at me and he says, "Ray, you may know a lot about bowling, but you sure know nothing about basketball."
And what about football? You had a little interest in football.
Well, I was going down to St. Louis University there, and I thought, oh, I'd play football. I like to play football here at St. Louis University High School. And I was about 5'10", weighed 190 pounds, and I was too slow to be a fullback, which I was, and I was too little for be a linebacker. And I'm walking down the hall, and here comes this gentleman. I think he weighed 300 pounds and 6'8", and I looked up at him and I said, bowling's for me.
Well, how did you get interested in bowling, and how did you get so good?
Oh, well, I set pins when I was where's OSHA? Are they in the audience? I was 14 setting pins at Stein Brothers Bowl, and I'd set 4 games for 7 cents a line, and then bowl 1 game for 28 cents, and that's how I got interested in. But you know, the other thing I like to talk about our team, because with baseball, with Ken here and everything, but our team did a lot of exhibitions throughout the year. We always needed a bowler here and there, and Joe Garagiola and Red Shandies could bowl, and they'd fill in on our team occasionally. And that was a lot of fun. And then the other story, you know, Stan Musial was in business here in St. Louis, Redbird Lanes with Garagiola. But we had an exhibition up in New Jersey. It was Yogi Bear and Phil Rizzuto had a spot up there. So we had an exhibition up there, and Yogi's there, and we're talking and everything. He says, "Come over to the game tomorrow." And boy, we thought that's a great idea. It was Weber and Carter and the team. We said, "Oh, we'll come over to the game." So we go over to the game. It was a sellout. We go to the box office, look for our tickets. They said, "We don't have any." We said, "What?" "Yeah, Yogi said we're supposed to have tickets." "No, you don't have any." So we see Yogi way down the gangplank, and we're yelling, "Yogi, Yogi!" Never answered. We went back to the hotel.
Well, you were talking about your team, and you got, and I think you personally did it, you got Anheuser-Busch to sponsor the Budweiser team.
Well, it was Whitey Harris and I, and Whitey Harris was a police sergeant down in the 3rd District, and there's a fellow named Jim McGuire was in charge of security with Manufacturer Railway Company, and Whitey got to be friends of Jim McGuire, and Jim McGuire, his job, how would I say this politely, his job was keeping Gussie Bush out of trouble. And he got us in with Fleischman Hillard, and then we had a opportunity for a meeting down there. and we decided that we're going to ask for $15,000 to sponsor, which is a lot of money back then. And anyway, at the meeting, and Mr. Fleischman Hiller says, well, what do you want? And I blurted out $25,000, and Whitey about died. But we got the sponsor.
That's great. And you mentioned a couple of your teammates on that great Budweiser team.
Oh, they got Don Carter, who was the greatest in the early 50s there. And then a year later, we picked up a little guy from Indianapolis, from Dick Weber. And when you had Carter and Weber, and then we had Hennessy and Patterson and myself on the team, and we sort of dominated the bowling industry in the 50s. In fact, thinking back what happened, our team was so popular, the Pentagon contacted Anheuser-Busch, and they wanted our team to tour Japan and South Korea, and we did that. And the other little story, getting into it, the Sports Illustrated had a story on the team, and they said, it's the best team money can buy.
How did you all get together?
Well, you had a young group of bowlers that just wanted to excel and get together and form a great team, and we did.
Well, you did. You won 5 national match game championships, and on March 12th, 1958, your team rolled an unbelievable 3,858 pin series to set the national record.
That was a national record. It lasted for 30 years, but with the new technology, it's been beaten. But you know, the other record that I had, I like to talk about, is the ABC Masters, where I shot 801, but I shot 1051. I thought that will never be beaten. Never be beaten. The next day, Don Carter shot 1084.
Well, during that series, you rolled a 300 game also.
Right, I did. I had the first 300 in the Masters and the first 800. But just say, Don put me back in my place.
Okay, you rolled two consecutive, this is that night. You rolled 2 consecutive 267s before the 300 in the final game for an 834 series.
Right. Actually, I had 33 strikes. At that time, that was a world's record. Of course, now it's been beaten many times, but that was a world's record at that
33 strikes 33. Out of a possible 36.
But you know, the story is I had 267 the second game, and Tom Hennessy, he had 300, and he got on my case. He said, get your butt in gear. And then I had 300, and he said, Ray, I can never get ahead of you.
Well, from a guy who has a 155 average, I'm not going to doubt that. You also won 4 national doubles titles with Dick Weber.
With Dick Weber, the skinny little guy from Indianapolis. Dick was a fantastic bowler. In fact, he was the best ambassador that the industry had for years and years. He worked for AMF. He traveled the world. But Dick and I were very compatible. We won 4 national titles. We finished second twice and three times. But Dick and I understood each other's games. He always played 2 boards further left than I did, so we knew exactly how to play the lanes. But he was a wonderful person. I really miss him.
He had a pretty good hook, huh?
Oh, yeah. People say, how did you develop your lineup? And Dick joined the team, and the reason we put him last, nobody wanted to follow him. He had too big of a hook. We couldn't follow his line.
Great. Well, you also were very instrumental in forming the Professional Bowlers Association.
Well, in 1958, our team was probably the most popular team in the bowling industry at that time, especially with the 38-58. And the other thing that happened, Budweiser produced a Bowling with the Bud film that was edited by Bill Stern, and that was shown throughout the nation and all the theaters. So we were very popular at that time. But Eddie Elias formed the Professional Bowlers Association with a group of 33, which our team was one of them. But without our team, it probably wouldn't have been organized. But Eddie went on with our team. He also developed the PBA Tour on ABC, which was, he was a friend of, I can't think of his name now, but with ABC, they developed a show, and he had Firestone for the sponsor, and that show was on there probably for 20-some-odd years. Bowling was very popular in the 50s and 60s.
I remember that. I was getting interested, I guess, in bowling in the early 50s, and I remember the Budweisers. And did you ever bowl at the arcade lanes?
Oh, yes.
That's where I think I saw you.
Probably personally. Arcade. It's long gone. Bowling would have been more successful if we had the big stadiums, but it sort of died out after the after the PBA went off of the television, we found we were introduced prior to Worldwide of Sports. And Chris Schenkel did our show with Nelson Burton and Billy Whaley, and then you had Jay Randall from St. Louis. He did a lot of shows. In fact, Jack Duck did some of the shows.
Well, how did you get so good? I mean, what was your practice like?
I don't have no idea. I think you're determined to develop a game. You watch different people. You try and study the game, and it takes a lot of practice. And I was very fortunate to have good coordination.
Well, we were talking about the PBA Association, and you were president of the association for a lot, and held many other positions.
I was very fortunate. I was president of the Professional Bowler Association for a couple of years, held many offices. Of course, I bowled on the tour for about 10, 12 years, and it was very enjoyable. But, you know, my legacy is not bowling. My legacy is my family. Like my wife over there of 62 years. And my family, they're very successful. My kids all went to college, which I really enjoy that. And we currently have 8 grandchildren, and 3 are out of college, 3 are in college, and 2 are working their way up. And that's the legacy I like to talk about.
Well, that's great. That's great. If I took you out on the lanes right now, what would you bowl?
I don't bowl anymore. Everything gave out.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Bluth.